Hello, welcome to Eating Well with Bladder Cancer. Tips from the founder of Cook for Your Life, Ms. Ann Ogden Gaffney. We're delighted to have Ann join us from her kitchen in New York for this live broadcast.
It's great
My
to
name
be
is
here.
Stephanie. Great. My name is Stephanie Chisholm, and I'm the Director of Education and Research with the Bladder Cancer Advocacy Network. And we often speak to patients who really want to know what they can do to improve their health as they go through treatments. That's a question we get from a lot of caregivers as well. They want to be able to do something for their loved ones. And so Beacon is getting ready to launch a new quarterly wellness newsletter. So if you're interested in receiving this electronic newsletter, please use the little survey box that's there in your comment box on your screen and register right now. One of the things that we find that patients and caregivers are very interested in is nutrition. And we're delighted to bring in Ann, from a former fashion consultant turned cookbook author, all the way there, as I mentioned, from her kitchen in New York. So welcome, Ann. It's a delight to have you here.
It's so great to be here, Stephanie. Thank you so much for having me.
So how did you go from being a fashion consultant to being the founder of a nonprofit organization, Cook for Your Life?
Well, I probably wouldn't have, none of this would have happened if I hadn't have got diagnosed with cancer twice in like in kind of short shrift, if you like. Within 3 years, I had two diagnoses, and the second diagnosis, I had to go through all the the slash burn and poison of cancer treatment, and I found myself going into support groups and sort of meeting a lot of people. Now, I have to sort of preface this by saying I come from a really foodie family. My granddad was a chef. And he was Italian. My dad was a master baker, and my uncle was a chef as well. I mean, that's the kind of family I come from. And I've always cooked. And, in my fashion career, I lived I lived all over the world. I lived in Paris for 12 years. I used to travel all over the place, to Italy a lot, like being back home, and to the Far East, and all of this kind of informed my cooking as I went along. And it's just been, it was just kind of great. And I just use this for myself and for my friends. But when I got sort of walloped with cancer, especially the second time, because I had to go through chemotherapy, etc., I found that it stood me in really good stead. I was able to, when my taste buds went south, I was able to kind of adapt my food in order to make things work for me. And I could sort of listen to my body and kind of have what I needed. And when I was in the support groups, I realized I was really lucky, and a lot of people didn't have this ability to just play with their food to get what they needed from it. That a lot of people basically didn't really cook. Their nutritionists would tell them to eat more vegetables, or put them on a clinical diet. But for many of them, it was a complete nightmare to even have to deal with any of this stuff. So I started to share recipes and ideas, things that were working for me. And then I sort of was introduced to this patient navigator at one of the big hospitals in New York, and we set up a cooking class. And now that was really my sort of epiphany, if you like, because helping people to cook, because I realized that people's lack of cooking skills were what were the block here. That watching people realize that they could actually do things, they could actually cook and make things for themselves, and just seeing how the delight and joy it brought them, that was like incredible. And I found that I just didn't really want to go back into the fashion business. And so I started to look to ways to help the community. And then I started Cook for Your Life in 2007.
Right. Well, that's excellent. So you started, your first cooking class, you said, was with breast cancer patients. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
And then you've also been diagnosed with bladder cancer.
Oh yeah, I've had kidney cancer, breast cancer, and bladder cancer. So and bladder cancer is kind of recent, which is
well. you also have connected yourself with some very prestigious organizations, whether it's there in New York at Columbia University and Mount Sinai, American Cancer Society's Hope Lodge, and then you're now doing some work with the Fred Hutch Cancer Center in Seattle, Washington. So you're very definitely bi-coastal in what you're doing. And what motivated you to kick it up a notch, as Emeril Lagasse usually says, and write a cookbook that actually was nominated for a prestigious James Beard Award? You put it all together. You were teaching these classes, and then you decided to do a cookbook. What motivated that?
Well, we're starting to work on the website, and I just felt that a cookbook would be a really great thing, because not everybody. Everybody uses online recipes, but I felt that a lot of the cancer cookbooks that were around, they weren't written by patients, really. They were written by nutritionists or doctors who may deal with patients, but don't necessarily understand what it is to go through the treatment. So I figured that it would be really good to write a cookbook that sort of grouped things up into say, for example, there's basics like 5 ingredient recipes, things that are quick if you're tired, or if you're a caregiver and you're strapped for time. Soothing dishes, things that are just basically the chicken soup recipes of the world, if you like, so that when you need to have something that's kind of soothing to your body, you can find it in one place. And we dealt with all the things that I'd had to deal with, I guess, and most of the people I know who've been through cancer have to deal with. Things like special clinical diets, like bland diet, like antimicrobial diets, and also taste changes, because I found that I craved spicy food, and I found a whole bunch of us did the same thing. So so I thought, this is beyond just having sort of smooth, like gentle food. It also needs some fierce food to deal with the taste. So we wanted to have a whole bunch of spicy things in there. So so we addressed the cancer patient's needs directly in this book, make it very easy for the patient or for the caregiver to find stuff.
Yeah, so some of the recipes that we're going to talk about today, they're not complicated recipes. No. They're not things that take many steps, many plates, or even a ton of ingredients. And they're all things, especially now in the summertime, we're able to find more of these fruits and vegetables that we'll be talking about today. So how about we start with one of the topic areas that I think is really important, especially in the summertime when the weather is getting warm, and that's hydration. Hydration is really important for any patient, particularly for cancer patients and also for bladder cancer patients. So we know that drinking water and lots of healthy fluids can help to dilute some of the harmful substances in your urine and flush them out of your bladder a little bit faster, even though we haven't seen any conclusive evidence showing that drinking water reduces bladder cancer risk. It does help your body to eliminate some of the chemicals that might be sitting there that your body's trying to get rid of. And we know that, for instance, in bladder cancer patients who've had their bladders removed, have a urinary diversion that uses a piece of their intestines to help get that urine out of their body, whether it's a neobladder or an Indiana pouch or even an ileal conduit. That intestine material has mucus in it. And if you're not hydrated enough, that mucus can get thicker, it could clog, it could cause you to have to catheterize. So give us some ideas of some healthy things that you have found that are tasty, that can really activate your taste buds, are easy to prepare, and make it really lovely for you to drink more or even eat more hydrating fluids in your food.
Yeah, and this is, as you're talking, this is the thing that I keep thinking about. It's about hydrating foods. Water is great, but it hydrates you, but not as fully as hydrating foods do. And we're talking about the ones that the risk reducing foods, the fruits and vegetables. The more fruits and vegetables you eat, the more hydration you're getting in your food. And you can think about sort of real basic things, like, for example, watermelon. And this is something, it's all water pretty much, but it's also got a lot of vitamin A, vitamin C, It's got lycopene in it, which is an antioxidant. So it's more than just a drink, if you like. And this is something that you can just eat in a big slice, or you can mix it in a salad with some protein like feta cheese. And I think, we have a recipe for that on the site. Also, one of my favorite is a Minty Pea Soup. And this one, again, you can find the recipe on the Cook for Your Life website. And this is basically, it's so simple. It's frozen peas, stock. You can do chicken stock, or you can do a vegetable stock, and some spring onions and mint. And so mint helps the digestion. The peas provide protein, as does the stock. And it's just a delicious, easy, hydrating soup drink. And it's, I think it's these kinds of foods are overlooked in the discussion on hydration. You keep thinking of glasses of water, but it's beyond that. And
well,
also,
I'm glad we're doing this after lunch, because you're making me hungry. So actually, I am going to let everyone know that we should be dropping the links to those recipes on the cookforyourlife.org website.
Really good.
That sounds delicious. And I know we have a video of you preparing a lovely drink with some fresh fruit in it, or some frozen fruit in it, to help really get you hydrated. So can we show the video?
One of my favorite things in the summer is to make really fruity waters. Now, you can buy a lot of these things commercially, but quite frankly, you don't really know what's in them. But with these ones, you know exactly what it is. Now, there is a classic where you can slice up cucumber and just put that into water. Most people know about that. But what I'm going to show you today is one which I really kind of find is fabulous, which is using frozen fruit to flavor water. Not only does it make it cold and icy and refreshing, it actually adds flavor. And the fruit is, you can put whatever you like. I'm going to be using raspberries today. And this is so simple, it's stupid. All right, so put the raspberries in there. Now, I've kept this because I can now just seal these and put them back in the freezer. Right, now we're going to put some mint in here too. We're not going to pull the leaves off the mint or anything like that. We're just going to rub it a little bit just to bruise it and put it in. Now at this point, if you like, you can put a little bit of sugar in, but I don't. And then this is all you have to do, is pour water on top. Look at the gorgeous colour. Now, I'm just going to give it a little swirl around. I'm going to muddle it. Bit more water. And that, my friends, is it. It couldn't be too much easier than that. And you've got this fantastic raspberry mint flavored water. And you can put this in the fridge right now, it'll chill further and it will be perfect. Or you can just dump some ice in it. Now, the good news is that once you've finished it, those raspberries in the bottom, you can save them and put them into a smoothie. So, this is a no waste, super easy, fabulous summer thing to do, okay? Now, just quickly, I want to show you something else. With this, you can put, now if you like soda, and a lot of us do, put that so you can still see it, it's so pretty, you can just get some seltzer water and top up your drink with the seltzer water, and that will give you a little bit of the fizz and the tickle in the back of your throat, which soda is the thing that most people seem to like. Okay, cheers!
That looks so refreshing. And my favorite part is the fruit at the bottom. That's like my prize for drinking the whole glass. And my excuse for getting a new one, because I got rid of all the fruit also. So I always it's usually what happens when I'm wearing a white shirt, and of course it misses and it lands right on the front of my white shirt. But
always.
that's always the way. But it's wonderful when you can have that. And you can obviously do that with very ripe fruit from the grocery store right now. When you're out at your farmer's market, you find a very ripe piece of fruit. You can do the same thing, right? You could do that with peaches, I'm supposing, or
absolutely. You can
other
do it
fruits
with
as well.
You can do it with anything. I mean, the traditional thing is cucumber water, obviously, where you're slicing up the cucumber and putting it in, but I think the fruit just adds another dimension because it adds sweetness, because so much of the commercial sodas have a lot of sugar or sweetener in them, and people are kind of used to that. And so to have natural sweetness of fruit, I think, is really a great thing.
Sure. Yeah.
And do you know where it comes from?
Yeah, it really is lovely, especially when you buy locally, and it's just something that is just very fresh and very ripe right there. If you happen to have anything in your yard, even if you have mint in your yard, it's so easy to be able to just pluck a piece of mint and stick it in your glass. It's also very nice.
God! And if you've got mint in your yard, you probably have too much of it anyway. So it's like.
I believe that mint is considered a weed, and it does grow everywhere, but it is lovely, so it's very nice to have.
And it's so good for the digestion too.
Great. So we've talked about the watermelon feta salad, which I'm definitely planning to make for dinner. And we'll look at the soup as well. We have the soup recipe that we were putting into everybody's comment feed, so they should be able to hit that link and get right to the minty soup. Do we want to talk now about some small plate ideas? Does that sound like a good idea for you?
That sounds really good. And actually the soup is a really good segue into that, because it's a kind of light, delicious thing that makes a really good small plate. Now, one of the big things about small plates are that, and having been there, if you like, when you go through cancer treatment, there are times when, the idea of eating food is kind of awful, actually. And you don't really want to eat too much. And a lot of caregivers will want to feed the patient up. And sometimes that is really the opposite of what you should be doing, which is feed them up, yes, but to do it in like 5 to 6 small meals a day. And not to have a big plate of food that overwhelms the patient. I'm just going to show you these. These are just, got so tethered here with this thing. These are like dinner plates. So we've got the dinner plate on the outside, salad plate, and a side plate. And in fact, you should ditch the dinner plate and really only work with the salad and side plates, so that you've got small plates which aren't overwhelming. Things, for example, if you have a bit of grilled chicken or poached chicken, don't put the whole breast on the plate. Just slice it up and put like 3 or 4 slices of the chicken on the plate, along with some vegetables and a little bit of grain or something. The other perfect things never to because we need to have protein in these small plates. And one of my favorite things are just eggs, hard boiled or made into like little frittatas, which you can put into muffin cups just to make them bite sized. You could, and they have a lot of great nutrition, healthy fats, and a lot of protein, so it's really good. The other thing too is things like canned fish, and so we have a recipe on the website, which is one of my favorite, which is tuna. It's a tuna and cranberry bean salad. That you can make that with canned beans, canned pinto beans, or canned white, cannellini beans. And if you get like a tuna, I'm just going to hide the thing there, that's water packed chunk tuna, then you have this fantastic light protein packed salad, and you can just put it in a small quantity, just as almost like a taste. And the soups, like as we were talking about, like the green pea soup or broths, all of these things are like really great as well, to make part of these small meals, because it is important that they have a lot of protein in them, so that they can help build the strength up for the patient.
Sure. I think that's particularly useful if you have surgery for your bladder
Yeah.
cancer, if you're on any kind of systemic chemotherapy, people often experience nausea or just a lack of appetite makes it really challenging to eat a regular plate of food that everyone else normally would eat. And we tend to go big or go home here in the United States with these larger plates. So that comment you made about the plate size, I think, is really important because it becomes overwhelming when you see a full plate of food and you really don't feel like even eating much of it at all. So that can certainly be a problem. And then also in the heat.
Well, in the heat as well. And I was going to say, it's a problem because, you know, with the patient, they have how they're feeling, but they also want to please the person who's trying to help them, their caregiver. So it's kind of a double thing. So the small plates are really helpful because it helps gives everyone a really good guide. And I just want to say that plate sizes in the US are about 30% bigger than they were 20 years ago. So everything has gotten bigger, including us, unfortunately.
Yes, apparently that is a very significant problem. So again, the cookforyourlife.org website has a number of really lovely recipes. You don't have to subscribe to access those. You can visit cookforyourlife, that's one word, .org, and get all of those recipes that Anne is talking about. What are some of the foods that we can use that can help to reduce the risk of a recurrence? That's such a big issue for bladder cancer patients.
Yes,
and also for loved ones to feed the rest of the family, because we're all now on hyper alert about cancer and wanting to reduce the risk of anybody else developing cancer in a family. So talk a little bit about what you've learned and what you're sharing about the foods that you can eat to help reduce the risk.
Okay, so just give me a second. I'm just going to retilt my screen so you can see this huge selection of fruits and of vegetables I've got in front of me. Oh, shit, my fabulous helper husband is doing this.
Great.
Keep going. There you go.
Oh, that looks like you've just been to the farmer's market. It looks beautiful.
Well, and it's full of beautiful, delicious things, you know, because, you know, I was talking earlier on about arugula and the cruciferous vegetables. A lot of these things here, you know, we have broccoli here in the front, beautiful cabbage, you know, totally underrated veg, but it's one of my favorites. Radishes, these also are cruciferous, and they have antioxidants in the red, as do the beets. Big load of beets here. Ooh, there you go. I'll just lift one up. And here, actually, by the way, we've got the beet leaves, which a lot of people just tear off and throw away. But you can cook these like spinach, and they actually have more nutrition in them than the actual beets themselves. So you can make a salad.
Can I comment on the beets? I use my beet greens for salads all the time. They're lovely, very tasty.
No, well, yeah, I'm glad you do. I mean, I was the person who going behind, you know, picking these out of the supermarket bin, quite honestly, when people threw them away. Of course, Superfood Kale. This is Lacinato Kale, which is just another variety. It's my favorite one, so I always buy this one. But the curly kale is just as good nutritionally. Foods like asparagus, which are in season right now, so these are really great. Basically all fruits and vegetables. We've got ruby chard here as well. Anything green and leafy is going to be really good for you. We've got peppers too. This is a poblano pepper because I like mine a little bit spicy. But these are bursting with vitamin C. All of these they have, you know, dark leafy greens have vitamin C, they have calcium, they have vitamin K. They have sulforaphane. I can never say the word because it's like one of those huge long ones. But basically, these are the basis of a really sort of healthy diet. And if you, for example, when I go to the farmer's market and when I get a whole bunch of things like this, what I'll do is I'll blanch them. I'll strip the leaves off and I'll blanch the things and put them into Ziploc bags and put them in the freezer. So I have them for another time so they don't go bad. Because a lot of the time people say, oh, I get these things, but they go off. So now the other thing, I'm just going to reach behind me. which is totally fabulous, are berries. So now's the time of year for strawberries. So we have strawberries. Blueberries are coming into season, but all berries are great to be used frozen. When they're not in season, just buy frozen. Okay, you're not going to be able to eat them by the handful like you can here, but you can make compotes, which are just as delicious, and you can use them to flavor yogurt, you know, whatever you like. And of course, too, we have stone fruit as well. It's time for peaches right now. So we're just starting to get the first yellow peaches here in New York. And I mean, this is the time of year just to sort of really go for it, I think, and to start to get into the habit of eating more greens. And the more greens that you eat, basically, you know, you'll start to eat less of the stodgy, starchy stuff, and you'll start to feel better.
Right. Well, I think you're really giving credence to that term about you should really eat from the rainbow. You've showed us so many beautiful, very varied colors of vegetables and fruits that are really going to enhance everything that we all like to eat, but also can help us heal and help us feel better and, you know, calm things like the nausea and some other things that typical patients are going through. So as far as, you know, doing preparation, you know, sometimes if a person doesn't live with their loved one that is helping to care for them, they can help by having some of the foods prepped in advance. You mentioned putting some of the fruits that you're picking now, that you're getting from the market now, in the freezer so that they're already blanched and ready to add into, say, soups or stews or other cooked recipes. Can you talk a little bit about some of those things, about making convenient food in your own home so that it is then convenient?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a great one for making the freezer your friend. And so things like kale, I mean, I'll just show you just quickly. Oh, not so quickly. Basically, what you need to do is to strip the heavy leaf out of there. Oh, I've gone all pixelated. I've gone.
But I think you'll come back.
Yeah,
I'll give it a minute.
Well, all I'm doing is just pulling the stem out, and the leaves, you just wash them and just put them, just steam them with the water that's clinging to the leaves until they just wilt. Then squeeze the water out, and then, you know, you can freeze them. And I use freezer bags because that way you can put them into like quart size so that you can have something that's portion sized for you. And same thing for any soups you make. You can put those in, you can make a whole, if you're living on your own, you can make a whole recipe, but then you can bag it up into quart size bags so that you know, you're not overwhelmed with the giant one that you eat for a week. And it's really sort of simple. And things like berries, you were talking about having, you know, raspberries and things in your garden. I think those you can also freeze when they're in abundance. You can just put them onto a baking sheet in a layer and put them in the freezer. And then when they're frozen solid, you put them into bags to keep. That way they won't clump. So there's lots of ways to do this. And, you know, or to make, you know, sort of soups and things or vegetable stews and then freeze them for later. I'm a big one for make a lot, freeze it, eat it when you can't be bothered to cook something.
Absolutely, because you never know when you're going to have a great day and feel like you could do something, and then when you're going to have a day where you really don't feel like even eating, but you know you need to. So you just want something that's quick and simple. That's also true.
Too true. I mean, when I was going through treatment, that's what I did. When I felt well, I'd make food, I'd freeze it for when I felt horrible.
And I know a lot of people tell us that their loved ones, their family members and friends and neighbors say, what can I do? And, oh no, I got it. I'm taking care of my loved one and I don't need any help. But perhaps they could go to the cookforyourlife.org website or go to bcan.org, our website, and click on the nutrition tab, we have a number of different recipes up on there, some of which are from a study that we did with the University of Kansas. They put up some recipes as well as some additional recipes from the Smith Center for Wellness in Washington, D.C. And those are all things you could suggest to a neighbor if they wanted to do something for you. Say, well, how about, would you like to make something that we can have in the freezer? And then you could have all this stuff prepared, and somebody else is going to feel good that they're doing something for you, but it's not something that's going to be really taking a great deal of time or effort. They can do it in advance, and then it's ready when you are, which is a good thing to do.
Which is a really good thing. And I would not be shy about telling people who want to help what you need.
Exactly.
That is, the big thing, because, otherwise people spin their wheels. They don't know what to do. So it's a good thing to tell them. And by the way, one of these things with greens and stuff, they're great, mixed up with pastas. So rather than like a mac and cheese, you could have a pasta with greens and which can then, be cooked in the oven or something. So there's a lot of different things that you can do.
A little olive oil and a little garlic makes the world go around, right?
It sure does.
This is true. Well, while we have been talking, we've had a number of questions come in. One of them is a question from a patient, have bladder cancer, but also have one kidney. Can you think of any special nutrition they could do to address both of those concerns, being down a kidney and also having bladder cancer? Is there anything in particular that you can think of?
Well, I just would say, eat your greens. I'm the same. I have one kidney and I have bladder cancer. So, you're in my club. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just to try and eat as healthily as possible, to try eat as many whole foods as possible. And that's basically the whole thing. It's just to keep eating healthy food.
Okay. Well, somebody else is saying, it's great to see you, and all these recipes sound perfect right now. What about patients that don't have surgery for their bladder cancer and are treated with chemo and radiation? Doctors say to avoid acid, spicy foods because they can irritate the bladder wall. What about those patients?
Well, I think, you have to go, I would start with something like that. I would start on the bland side, but spicy doesn't preclude sweet spices, things like turmeric or cumin. These kinds of things it's a capsaicin in hot peppers and chilies, and chili flakes, which can be a real irritant. And with the acid, I use a lot of lemon on my food, just to lift the flavor. It may be to go easy on that, and maybe just use the zest instead to get the flavor rather than to actually use the acid, until such time as you feel kind of more, relaxed about it. But I think basically, it's don't go and eat that bowl of red hot electric chili, but just go easy.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, and then for people that find that food tastes very bland, sometimes adding, as you say, that little bit of pepper kind of kicks it up to the place where you can then taste it and enjoy it, because food, sometimes I think with some of the chemotherapies, people say that they have kind of a metallic taste in their mouth.
Oh, so, yeah.
Things like switching from metal utensils, like fork and knife, to bamboo might help to reduce that risk, or using chopsticks perhaps to eat your food might help reduce that.
It does, but my own experience of working, with hundreds of cancer patients over the years, it's a little bit of trial and error. You have to kind of work around to see what works for you. For example, I couldn't abide lemon juice, but I could tolerate lemon zest. So, in water and in drinks and things like that. And so I started to look for other tart things that I could put, and I found things like pomegranate juice, pomegranate molasses, hibiscus tea, which sounds a bit esoteric, but it's quite a lot. It's used a lot it's called Flor de Jamaica in the Latino community. So it's quite prevalent. And these are things which give a great tart flavor that kind of wipes that metallic taste out. And it's a question of just like trying, to find what works for you. But one thing I would say, if a favorite food tastes like hell when you're going through cancer treatment, just stop eating it until you're way over your treatment, because you could end up hating it, literally, because every time you take a bite of it, it's going to take you back to when you felt horrible. So, if anything starts to taste strange, experiment. And it may sound counterintuitive, but cancer treatment is a time to experiment with different tastes.
Sure. Well, let's see. I think we don't have any more questions coming in right away. And a couple of other things that we had talked about earlier. So, for instance, doing a preparation with something like Swiss chard and eggs in muffin cups allows you to make cute little breakfast muffins, and then you can defrost them from the freezer as needed.
Or you can just, what I do at home is I have, you can do that. Or I just I have a cute little 6-cup muffin tin, and they'll keep in the fridge for like up to 3 days. So you can just keep them to snack on. But it's a really great thing too, because afterwards, after all of this is all done and dusted, they're great for a lunchbox. They're great for picnics. They're just great snacks to have, and they're very rich in protein, and they're also great for the small meals. So because you can put whatever you like in them. The chard is great. And I sometimes put chard, and then I put a little bit of feta, then I top it up with the egg, and, so you get like a little layered muffin. You could put, other greens in there as well, other vegetables. If you have roasted vegetables left over, you can chop those up and put them into egg and make these little muffins with like sweet potatoes, if you like.
One of my favorites. Really good idea.
Or even squash.
Yeah. So sometimes patients will maybe have a referral to a dietitian or somebody who does nutrition within their hospital institution. Not everybody has access to some of the great places that you went to and that you got your care. So how do you suggest people work with registered dietitians? I know you said it was easy for them to give you, this is what you need to eat, but then the practical end of how do you get it on your table and how do you sit down to eat it is the hard part. So what are some ways that people can work with the registered dietitians that you've experienced? Or some suggestions you have for taking that information from a dietitian and then making it practical?
I think basically one of the most scary things about working with, especially when you get a special clinical diet, when, with a dietitian, is that you get told in great detail what you can't have. And then when you look at what you can have, it can be very distressing because it may not be what you like or what have you. And that's one of the reasons why I started Cook for Your Life as well, is because it's to help people, to give people kind of some direction as to what they can do with what's on those lists. So you can search on Cook for Your Life, for different kinds of diet. If you're on a bland diet, you can look and you'll find a whole slew of things which are much more interesting than the list that you get given, but are part that use the things on the list that you can eat. So we do your thinking for you in that sense. And I think that's part of the problem. You get asked to make a big change, and then the dietitians, sometimes they are, but a lot of the time they're not cooks or chefs, so they can't really help you that much. So we get a lot of referrals now from dietitians on Cook for Your Life.
Good. And I absolutely encourage everyone to take a look at cookforyourlife.org, because I was on there. There are a lot of very tasty things I can't wait to try. Also, again, on the bcan.org website under nutrition, we have a lovely series of recipes and videos for very tasty foods. One of my favorites is the salmon patties with a nice little tartar sauce that goes on top with a little bit of curry in it. It's delicious and it's light. You can freeze these things. They're all things that help make life a little bit easier, because the last thing you want to do when you're not feeling well is to get home and make dinner at this point.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we always say make your freezer your friend. And when you're talking about salmon patties, by the way, canned salmon is a really great standby to have along with canned tuna in your pantry, because along with beans and lentils and things, canned fish is a really great source of protein and healthy fats.
Sure.
And you can turn it into patties,
You can turn it into so many things. It's wonderful.
And you can freeze them. Yeah.
This has been really informative. I don't see that we have any additional questions. I do want to, again, remind everyone, visit cookforyourlife.org. And then please use the link in the comment box to sign up now for the Beacon Health and Wellness updates that will be coming this fall. And thank you so much for joining us. This has been wonderful.
It was a real pleasure, Stephanie. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm going to go make some berry water and watermelon and feta cheese salad for dinner.
Enjoy.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye-bye.